He did not know her name. 6 other people were standing safely on the street, doing exactly what a person is supposed to do near a burning building. He'd already done that too, made it out, coughing, done. Then he went back in anyway. This file asks why. It won't be the last time this archive asks that question, and it isn't the first. Access granted. File 004, recorded at contact +3 by Scout Kess Renn of the Vantori. Records in this archive carry her name once already. She is currently assigned to post-contact behavioral survey work. Routine, unglamorous, the kind of posting an officer moves through between more sensitive assignments. Most of what that posting produces is unremarkable. That is the point of it. The Concord holds 2 working models for this species. One for a species that destroys what is precious to it for gain, one for a species that protects what is precious to it at cost. 3 files into this archive, neither model has held cleanly on its own terms. File 004 does not propose a third model. It asks whether the second one survives a second look. Scout Renn's account is short. She was asked twice to shorten it further. She didn't. My current posting doesn't involve a scout craft. It involves watching how this species behaves during the emergencies nobody films. The ordinary ones, the kind that happen somewhere on this planet most weeks, without any of us present to record them. Most of what I log is unremarkable. I want that on the record before I describe the exception. At contact, +3, on a residential street I'm not naming for this report, an electrical fault started a fire on the 2nd floor of a 4-unit building at approximately 2300 hours. I was 200 meters away on an unrelated observation when the alarm sounded. I want to fix the timeline precisely because this file will be tested on it. The first emergency vehicle arrived at 9 minutes, standard for the district. In those 9 minutes, I observed the following, in order. A man exited the building through the front entrance alone, coughing, in visible distress from smoke. I later identified him, at his own request, as Marcus Webb, resident of the ground floor unit. He had already gone back in once, before I began recording individual movement to retrieve a dog. I did not observe that entry directly and flag it as second-hand. What I observed directly: Webb reached the street, was sick once, and turned back toward the building. A woman on the 3rd floor, elderly, later confirmed to live alone, name withheld at her family's request, was audible from the street, calling from a window that would not open past its safety limiter. 6 other residents and bystanders were on the street by this point. I counted them because counting is what my posting trains me to do. None of the other 6 moved toward the building. I don't log that as a criticism. Every one of the 6 behaved exactly as the Concord's own civilian risk models predict an unequipped person will behave near an active structure fire. I note it only because it's the baseline the next thing I observed has to be measured against. Webb went back in. I don't have training sufficient to state with confidence what 4 unassisted minutes inside a structure fire does to an adult human body. I can state what I confirmed afterward. He had no equipment. He had no relevant training. His listed occupation is warehouse logistics, no emergency service history of any kind. He did not know the woman well. By his own account, they had lived in the same building for 14 months and spoken perhaps 3 times. He got her down the stairwell. The first vehicle arrived as they reached the ground floor. He did not go back a 3rd time, and I want to be precise about why I know that. I asked him. He said there was nobody left up there, and that he would have gone if there had been. Paramedics separated them within 90 seconds. Standard triage. Not a choice either of them made. She was transported in one vehicle. He was treated at the scene for smoke inhalation and 2nd-degree burns to both hands, and declined further transport twice before accepting it. 4 days later, I attempted to arrange contact between them for this report. It couldn't be arranged. In her statement to the local fire authority, which I obtained, she refers to him only as a man from downstairs. He asked me not to correct that record on his behalf. I asked him why. He said, "She doesn't need to thank me, she needed to get out." I asked a second question because the first answer felt complete to him and I wanted to test that. I asked whether he'd do it again, knowing now what 4 minutes inside had cost him. The burns, 2 nights under observation, smoke damage to his own lungs, his physician told him may not fully resolve. He took longer to answer that one. Then he said, "I don't know how I'd stop myself." I logged both answers. I have not been able to reconcile them into a single stated motive, and I don't believe that failure is mine. I logged that as consistent with a pattern this archive has recorded before. A stated reason that requires no further justification, offered without any apparent sense that it needs one. I'll note, because it's specific to this file. Webb had already discharged, by any standard I've been trained to apply, a reasonable duty to the building he lived in. He'd gone back once, for the dog. Nothing in any model I've studied would have required a second entry, for a neighbour he barely knew after he'd already made it out coughing and sick in the street. In 3 years on this posting, I have logged 141 structure fires, floods, and comparable emergencies across this survey population. In every one of them but this one, bystander behaviour matched the Concord's standard civilian risk model within an acceptable margin. People moved away from danger and waited for trained response, which is what an organism trying to survive is expected to do. This is the only file out of 141 where it didn't. When I filed this account, I was asked, twice, to reconsider its classification. Not to strike anything. To reclassify. The suggested framing was that Webb misjudged the severity of the fire on his second entry and acted on incomplete information rather than in full awareness of the risk. I checked this independently. The fire authority's own timeline confirms the second-floor stairwell was fully involved by the time Webb re-entered. Visible from the street, audible from the street. He did not misjudge anything. He knew exactly what he was walking back into, and I've recorded it that way. I was told, in the same conversation, that if the account stood as filed, it would be the second independently verified instance of this exact behaviour in 3 years, and that this office does not currently hold a framework for a second instance. The officer who said it did not seem to hear it until I read the sentence back to him. I filed the account unchanged. Scout Renn's account was returned to her twice for reclassification, not redaction, a distinction the requesting officers were careful to draw, and one Renn declined to accept either time. Both times she resubmitted it exactly as written. 2 independent, unrelated instances of the same behaviour 3 years apart are not yet enough for this office to agree to call it a pattern. That's not a finding, it's an administrative position, and Renn's report, correctly, in my judgment, declines to soften it into anything else. Renn's willingness to hold a line on someone else's account will not surprise anyone who has read this archive before. It shouldn't need to for anyone reading it for the first time. Marcus Webb has not been told there is a file on him. The woman on the 3rd floor still doesn't know his name. Filed under, not yet precedent.